Hi, I'm Nathan,
I'm Samuel,
and we're the Spiritual Statesmen.
and welcome to episode 3. So this episode is going to start off by talking through 3 different topics, and I think the first one that we want to mention, going off of last episode, how we talked about feminism a little bit, is that we want to dive a little bit deeper into the traditional values of feminism, but also the current Gen X and Gen Z traditional definition of feminism.
I would say millennial. Millennial, because it went Gen X, millennial, then Gen Z. More millennial and Gen Z type of definition. It's definitely changed over the past 40 to 50 years.
Yeah.
So the beginnings of feminism, but it's grown into something way different than the beginning. At first, it was advocating for woman equality and suffrage. Now it's showing yourself off on social media.
Yeah, and I think we've gone from a really good place, from like Amendment 19, Title 9, all this equality and giving women more power and more status in society. But I think now, how you were saying, it's a lot of, now I don't want to get too explicit, but showing off on social media, trying to, I think, degrade men in a sense where it's almost not even a equality thing anymore. It's more like a supremacy thing.
So it goes 2 ways. Like you said both of them. The first way is to empower themselves, quote unquote, because that's what a lot of women say today. They say that they do it for themselves. They give themselves away on social media and let other men, look at them for money, and they see that as a form of empowerment. You see, OnlyFans has grown handsomely the past 3 years. You have women making 6 figures and above, and that's the average.
Yeah.
So that's a problem in itself, and that's paved the way for a lot of pornography in our community.
And I want to touch on how you were talking about the money earlier. A lot of the average being 6 figures and stuff, and I think because they're making so much, people glorify it.
Yeah.
Right. And so everyone's I'm working a 9 to 5 and I'm only making 50 to 60K, but you are remotely showing yourself off online and you're making 6 figures, 7 figures simply because of your looks. And I feel like because of that, people glorify it. And that's why it's grown so much, because not only have people been glorifying it, but also they've been joining that ship.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's not glorifying anything at all. That's glorifying your pride. In the Bible, it says, what good is it if a man gains the whole world but loses his soul in the process? And I think that's a clear and perfect analogy or reference to what's happening today in our society. For women in this case, for men, we can talk about that later. Yeah. But for women in this case, they're selling themselves. They're selling their souls, not literally, but they're selling themselves to get temporary achievement and temporary success. Something that runs out, because beauty isn't forever. Yeah. Beauty is subjective, and a lot of the beauty and society standards, they change all the time. Like 1 year, one decade or one generation, something can be beautiful, and then the next, it's out of style.
Culturally too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like culturally, it's always changing, it's always moving, it's never consistent. So why put your life and trust and your dignity in something that's not consistent, right? You can only put your consistency in, it's only one thing that's consistent. We know that it's Christ. Yeah. So that's the problem. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I feel like in this day and age, moving away from OnlyFans, but also through social media like TikTok and Instagram, I feel like there's so much. I almost want to call it light pornography. It's not obviously there's that level to the extreme on other websites, but I feel like in this Instagram and social media, and sadly also I want to talk about this too. When I first created our TikTok for this podcast, the first video that I saw was a woman pretty much without clothes on, dancing, and I feel like it has millions of views simply because there's this ideology that it's glorified and that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think that when you touch on the age subject for this, Instagram's age restriction is what, 12? and TikToks I think might be even younger, you know. And so I don't know exactly the age limits, but I know that it's a young age to where we're feeding these children and these very, very young teenagers almost light pornography and showing them that it's okay, so that when they turn not even 18, when they're 14, 15, they're doing the same exact things, you know?
Yeah, it's a step-by-step process. You know, if you look at, you know, 100 years ago, maybe 150 years ago, look at America, it was women were wearing, you know, dresses. They were very
Elegant.
very elegant, right? They were showing their ankles, right? It was a joke, but like if they would show their ankles, it would be, oh my God, she's like sinning. Why is she showing her ankles? But now it's grown ever since America's been growing as a country and progressing, right? Societally, it's been digressing, right? We've been seeing more promiscuity. We've been seeing more fornication, which is like sex before marriage. With that comes women dressing less and less modest through the decades and through the generations, and now it's not even it doesn't even, I would say a more appropriate term, but it doesn't even excite like the men if a woman wears like shorter shorts than usual. Like it's just like our young men want to see more and more, to the point where it's like what is happening right now, like dude, it would be like it was a, I don't know how to explain it. Do you know what I mean though?
Yeah, like I feel like it's desensitized.
Yes, that's desensitized
in young children's minds now. Like I feel like when you go outside in I feel like almost any culture right now in America, you know, and there's this thought that not even women, men too, have consistently gotten to dress in different ways. And I think, yes, you're right, even from the 2010s or even the 2000s, people dress completely different. And they both have the same exact level of, you know, showing themselves off. But it's in a different way. And I feel like, especially in the 2020s and the 2010s decade of, you know, culture and style and fashion, it's been glorified to be showing off more skin. And I don't think showing off more skin is the bad part. I think it's the fact that you're showing it in a way that's almost flashing it in your face. And it's kind of like a bait, you know, like, look at me, because when you look at this part of me, your eyes tend to draw somewhere closer to, you know, something else. And I feel like, not just with women, I think with men too, when you go, I mean, the biggest thing right now, I feel like, is the Barbie movie. I don't know if you watched it, but like, you know, it's bad. Yeah. You know, and I feel like every second you're looking at either there's a guy showing himself off or there's a woman showing herself off. And I feel like it's just it's gotten to the point where people are desensitized in this generation. Whereas like if you go back to like Gen X, like I was saying, if you go to Gen X now and their traditional values, they would be disgusted with even the millennials, you know?
And the interesting part is the baby boomers and the generations before Gen X would be disgusted. They were disgusted, right? To Gen X. Like they were like, well, what does our society come to? And that's exactly what Gen X is saying to the millennials and to the Gen Zs. Makes you think, what's going to happen to our future generations? Yeah. If this is as bad as it is right now, how can it be any worse? Like that's the thing. And they ask this question every generation, but there's no answer to it. There's no line that's drawn. So that makes you think, what's it going to look like in 10, 20 years, 30 years, right? Yeah. What are our kids going to do? What are our kids going to think? And I believe that we're looking at the temporary satisfaction. We're looking at the temporary success. We're not looking ahead for our future generations, because that's what matters.
Yeah. And I just want to touch on like the fact that there's so many celebrities, how we talked about last episode, like showing themselves off, making it okay, you know. And I don't want to go back to like Taylor Swift, but like I feel like in the men aspect, you know, I think Lil Nas X is the biggest person that I can think of right now, and it's just like, yeah, there's jokes, but it's bad. Yeah. You know, and like it's really, really bad. And there's it's not only glorifying homosexuality, but it's also glorifying like this different type of stigma or this different type of fashion for men.
It's glorifying that. It is glorifying more homosexuality, but it's glorifying Satan at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Literally the song was him dancing on Satan.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother thing, bro. But but still, you're right that men doing that is like we understand. We can't even fathom that. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like that's just like so out of the ordinary, and people try to break social norms, right? That's what SJWs, the social justice warriors, try to do, is to break social norms, progress as a society. But we're digressing. If you look at the Bible, if you look at the Old Testament, people would have orgies. People would, you know, worship the other gods, right? Even though our society isn't blatant about it, we still worship other gods, the sex gods, the money gods, the abortion gods, right? But
our phones.
Yeah, our phones. I don't know what god that would be considered. Maybe a phone god.
No, I think the biggest part right now is that I think my philosophy is if you're spending more time on a device than you would be glorifying God. Now, you can definitely do both at the same time. But I think that if you are constantly overwhelming yourself and addicting yourself to social media, to technology, to this type of stuff, not only phones, like anything, you know, it could be food. It could be pretty much anything. And it's just, I feel like when you, drawing this back to the feminism part, I feel like we almost kind of treat feminism as a god.
Yeah.
You know,
feminists, they make that their whole identity to put themselves over over men.
Yeah.
They make that their identity to degrade men, right? We were talking about this, how the modern feminist movement is nothing like the traditional feminist movement.
Yeah, and I completely agree with the traditional movements. I feel like we have progressed in society to a good place where we're seeing men and women as equal now, right? I feel like when you look at like college statistics, like it's pretty much 50-50 of men and women. And now obviously our government might still be a little bit skewed, but you know, a lot of work fields, the medicinal work field, the legal field, there's a lot of women that are in high places of power, you know, and I'm all for that because I do think that women have strengths that men don't have.
Exactly. We work together so well.
Yeah.
That's why God created a man and woman.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, the woman was created because women are usually, they're smarter than men, right? That's inarguable. The scientific evidence, but they're smarter than men usually, but they have their strengths and weaknesses, and that's why we help each other out so well. Men are naturally stronger. Women are smarter. Women are more emotional. Men are more. They're not really emotional, so that's why they need a woman to, you know, to comfort them, to do all that stuff. So it goes hand in hand. And when you try to gray those roles, like we talked about last time, when you try to gray those gender roles, when you try to gray those lines, it creates confusion and it creates chaos. Like that's what's happening in our country today. We're trying to put women in men's places and then men in women's places. So that's not how it works, and that's not how God intended it to work.
Yeah, and I feel like when you move it on towards different ideas of like, I don't even want to say like a supremacy, but I feel like a superiority or like an ideology that in this non-traditional movement, in this more Gen Z movement, I feel like a lot of women are taking feminism as an excuse to degrade men.
Yeah.
And it's, now obviously some points I do understand. It is reasonable to an extent, but I feel like when you get to the levels or when you get into the area where you're crossing lines of it's no longer equality, but now men have to make up for all of the suffering that women had by themselves suffering. And I totally get the idea, but I completely disagree with the fact that we are going in the opposite direction now.
Yeah, so let me ask you, what do you mean by when you agree with the idea? Like how
like I understand the concept of like, for example, a lot of African Americans are trying to say, or a lot of different races that have previously been seen as under, you know, Caucasian people are now trying to go the opposite way. You know, we're trying to degrade Caucasian people to the point where it's like, now we're better than you. Almost to make up for the fact that they suffer for hundreds of years, you know? And that's the idea. I understand it. Not that I agree. Maybe I misspoke, but I understand the concept of it. But I don't think it's right to go the opposite direction.
I agree.
Because then you're just going the wrong way.
You're being a hypocrite. It's hypocritical at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you advocate for equality and you try to get equality by making society not equal, then it's like a teeter-totter, dude. Like you can't, it has to be equal, but when you have one side going too hard and one side bowing down, then it's gonna go like this every single time. It's never gonna be equal. But that's what the minorities don't understand, right? I'm a minority myself. I have a lot of Mexicans talking about that, but that's also what the feminists don't understand. They don't understand that you don't achieve equality by degrading the other side. You achieve equality by showing you are as important and you're an asset like the other side. Yeah. And that's what women have. I think that's what women have been doing over the years.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But
I just think that with this I think only in like the past 5-7 years, have I really seen an uptick of we don't want equality anymore. We want to be seen as better. And I don't know if this was as big of a thing as my brain has made it to be, but I remember there was this scientific discovery of like women being able to reproduce themselves with bone marrow. And I'm not too sure exactly how big it has become, but I do know that for a few weeks that ideology and the thought of that made it to the point where now we don't need men anymore.
It started actually a hashtag trend. This was in 2020, 2021.
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago.
Kill all men. That was it was hashtag kill all men. When they found out that supposedly babies can be made only from females out of bone marrow. Yeah. And it never ended up working, right? The babies would come out deformed and dead. They wouldn't even survive. But just that idea that they're trying to do that, and then once they have some little taste of that, they say kill all men. Right?
Yeah, and I just think it's almost going to an extreme. Like, oh, of course. I don't think that the word kill in regards to an entire race or species should be used at all. Never. I feel like even with, the worst of the worst, I just think that murder is such an extreme, and even if it's not actually done, even the theoretical concept of it, or even like the glorifying of it, I think is just so disgusting, because I think it's just, I don't know, people have taken feminism to the point where it's no longer equality.
It's not. And it'll never, I don't think, unless we have a giant culture change, that it's ever going to be like that. Yeah. I think that people are going to start bowing down, and people are going to be tired, and this is what's probably going to lead us to the other side of it, right? The, what did we agree on talking about? The incel movement?
Yeah, the incel. And I feel like, and so it stands for involuntarily celibate.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, there's a giant community on TikTok, on Instagram, known as like the Sigma community, the Red Pill Sigma incel community, where they joke around, they glorify not getting women, and basically, I would say to a degree, hating women, like they hate on women. And it's sad to see, because when I was younger, right, I was like, oh, I thought it was hilarious, I thought it was funny. But it does degrade women to the point where, like, even the ones who are not feminists, who actually believe in, like, who are traditional, who believe in gender roles, they're getting degraded too. And for example, you have the Patrick Bateman memes, right, where it shows like the Sigma male memes, and it glorifies hatred, and it glorifies, but not hatred, not for no reason though. Like, I understand, like you say, you understand, I understand too, because a lot of these males, due to the feminist movement, are hurt. They're brokenhearted because they want to be with a woman, but women don't need men these days. The only man they would chase is a man over 6 foot making 6 figures. He has to do this, he has to be like this, he has to drive a nice car, and that's just, it's like unreachable for a lot of men. It's a lot of men, like the average height is like, who am I to speak, right? But like the average height's like 5'7", bro, and women expect dudes to be like 6'3", 6'4", and I'm like, even I'm thinking in my head, like, bro, are you serious? Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that height's the biggest issue with it.
It's not. That's just an example.
I think it's more so the fact that there's so many standards being put on men.
Yeah,
and I think vice versa. There's also standards being put on women, but I think right now, like it's so normal and it's actually encouraging for women to reject men because they don't live up to unreasonable standards.
Exactly, and I think that going back to like when you said for a woman, I think that's true. I think back in the day that was even more the case. I believe that it was more than how women are today, but I think today it kind of switched, and the power structure kind of went. Men just would take men would take anything. There's jokes on Instagram I've seen all the time where it says like the average McDonald's cashier, and it shows like the most beautiful girl, and then like basically meaning that these days men would take a McDonald's girl who works at the McDonald's. She just needs to be pretty. Like even that, like the standards have gone so low because men are just they're not getting as many girls as they think they would.
And no, I think they're desperate.
Yeah, and that's what brings us in. That's what brought us to the whole incel movement. Like, I understand. Like, I get it. I know why they think the way they think. They think that it's women's fault. They think that all women are bad. Just like how women, another TikTok thing was all men are bad. Like all men are evil.
Yeah.
So men try to switch that back and say all women are evil. All girls are the same. They try to say that women break hearts. You don't trust women. They're liars. And that's not the case. Like that's not the case for all of them. There's some.
We're just killing each other.
Yeah, and that's not. You don't fight fire with fire, bro. You are the bigger man. We are men, so we're held to a standard, man. You have to be mature. If a woman doesn't want you, okay, that's fine. Walk away, and then work on yourself. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Coming
from a man to man, dude. And you would agree, man. Working on yourself, putting your head down, right, and showing that you deserve a woman. Showing God that you deserve a woman, bro. Because a woman isn't a toy, bro. Like they're actual human beings that, you have to provide and care for. You have to, yeah. So, dude, like showing that you are strong enough for that is one thing that the incel movement doesn't understand. They think that women should just throw themselves at men. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I think it gets to a point where we're basically beating each other up, and I think. I don't want to necessarily get too deep into whether or not there's like this ideology that all girls are the same, or then the other spectrum where it's all men are evil, they're toxic, they're abusers, So I feel like it gets to a point where we're not really understanding each other, and I don't think it's the providing aspect, but it's more rather being there for each other. I feel like in this day and age, there's so many points in so many fields where we're clashing, and like even in the acting community, even in, politics, there's so many, we tend to make such a big thing out of a guy versus a girl or a man versus a woman, and I feel like there's so many great aspects of both people outside of their gender. Like their gender isn't what defines them, it's what they're advocating for. And I feel like we tend to lose sight of what people are actually advocating for. Whereas, now obviously milestones are achieved and they should be celebrated. But I feel like in the 2016 election, when it was Trump versus Clinton, I feel like a lot of, like, there was never Trump's gonna be the 44th man in office, but the first woman in office, or when Kamala Harris won, it was the first VP as a female,
Yeah, and they make it such a, like, I'm not saying they make it such a big deal, because, I mean, it is.
It's a big deal, and it's a big step in the right direction for equality.
It's emphasized so much that we, like, basically, like, it's like women have been are held down at that moment. Like, for example, Morgan Freeman was asked about racism in an interview years ago. He said, basically, he was asked, what can you do to stop what can you do? What's a good idea to stop racism? Right? And Morgan Freeman said, well, just stop talking about it. Just stop talking about it. You can watch the thing. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
But Morgan Freeman literally just says, just stop talking about it. It'll go away. I think that's the same thing for feminism and what's the male term? Chauvinism. Stop making it men versus women and make it we are human. We understand men have strengths that women don't have, and women have strengths that men don't have.
Yeah.
and we can work together to build a better society, build families. That's how it's supposed to be. And that's how it's been for the past thousands of years.
Yeah. So my point, going back to that Hillary analogy, was just the fact that we hear so much about the first woman the first woman to do it, and it's great. It's great, and we're definitely taking a step in the right direction. But I feel like the first woman in VP or the first woman president, it almost is like their identity, and you don't really see what's behind. Like, why are they president? Why are they VP? Why do they have such high positions? Not because they're a woman, but because they've actually done stuff that has built rapport for them to gain that position. And I feel like we're blinded. Like, we have no idea. I have no idea what Clinton has done in order to even be the number 2, or what Kamala Harris has done. And I feel like a lot of times there's a masking of these women just because of they're women, whereas I feel like men, we have a more objective view of like, oh, they do this well. That's why they should be this, And so let's move on to the next topic of chauvinism, where I feel like there's a huge misconstruity of exactly what chauvinism is in comparison to feminism.
Yeah, so like we talked about before, chauvinism, misogyny, right? It's a very loose term used today, but for anything. If a man tries to say anything about women, he's automatically a misogynist and a chauvinist. That he thinks he's better than women. He wants to put women back down, and it's basically like it's such a loose word. Say, for example, I believe women should stay. I think moms should stay at home. Like, I think that's what I would prefer. I'm not saying that they have to stay at home, right? But I think that it would be better for the family if a mother stays at home, if a mother provides for her children, because statistically they come out as educated children, loved by the mother, right? They have a mom always there instead of her and the dad working, and the child has to be watched by someone else that's not their parent. And automatically society's gonna say, well, you're a misogynist. You think that women should stay at home? They have to stay at home. I'm saying no. I think that history has shown that mothers who stay at home have produced better, smarter, stronger, Christ-loving kids because they are teaching their kids their way. So I think that's a very big example that we can talk about, but that's one.
Yeah, and I think it's almost because now I don't want to say that like stay-at-home mothers aren't doing jobs. I feel like actually in that sense, and I think women should also probably agree with this, but if you're a stay-at-home mother, you probably do more than anybody else in any other job. And like, people tend to think like, oh, just because you're not making money means that you're not good enough. And I think a lot of women are saying like, oh, you want me to be a stay-at-home mother because you don't think that I can do anything. No, it's actually because I have all my trust in you to provide for my child.
That's a great case.
And so, yes, I provide, the financial stability, but you provide that stability for our children, And so I feel like a lot of fathers, yes, they're seen as the hero to their kids, but when you actually look at it, their connection to their mother is unmatched, Like, women have a natural nurturing instinct, whereas like men don't. And like the thing that I always like to go back to is like, if I have 2 children, dropping them off at a daycare, if it's run by all women, I have a little bit more trust than if it was a daycare run by all men.
Yeah,
It's just weird. And that's not saying like, if you want to take that route, oh, men can't do this, you can do it, but you have to acknowledge that the other gender, the other race does it so much better.
They're better. It's better. And that's the thing, dude. And I think woman, yeah, like you said, women say, well, you just don't want me to make any money because you think you see woman as a threat. And that's not how it is at all. And then they try to use the gender pay gap, right? Trying to say like 70 cents to the dollar that women make significantly less in basically pretty much most to all of the jobs than men. The WNBA is a great.
That's such a dumb comparison, mainly because I think that business people aren't that stupid. Because if you really think about it, if women are really claiming that they are the same as men, and that they're getting paid 70 cents on the dollar, men would have no jobs.
Exactly.
Because every business person saving 30 cents per dollar.
Right.
So I feel like it's not, the 70 cents is misconstrued. I think there's some truth to it, but it's not truth literally to how they're making it sound.
It's not. You're right. There's some things that obviously construction. For example, construction. You don't see a woman in construction. For police officers. Most men are most police officers are men. You have some that are women. But dude, you look at like bringing it back to OnlyFans, right? I don't want to bring it back to OnlyFans. Yeah. That's literally a thing dominated by women making more than 6 figures. You don't see. I mean. Where's the equality for that? Where's the inequality for men? Why are we saying, well, men aren't making as much on OnlyFans as women? Because, dude, like that's the thing. Like it's a messed up system.
That's how nature works.
And to claim that, well, women aren't making as much as men, you can use that, and then it would literally just shut them up. Like,
yeah, I think that you're never gonna get 100% equality in a field.
You can't.
It's just dumb.
In society, you'll never get 100% equality because we are different. You can be equal under the law, but just like naturally, like we're different, and that doesn't mean we're better than the other. It just means we're not equal.
But I do think that equality and balance are different.
Yes,
you can definitely find, and I think we have found, maybe not right now as we speak, but we have previously found a good balance of where men are thriving in their strengths and women are thriving in their strengths. And those strengths are each other's weaknesses, and that's why we build each other up so well. But now I feel like we're almost taking the fact, like sports, right? Like how you're saying the NBA and the WNBA. There's a crazy difference in the revenue that both leagues make.
Yeah, actually, there's a pot, right? I believe it's in soccer, but sports in general. Mm-hmm. There's a pot for men and women. And women are actually take more from that pot percentage-wise.
Yes.
Than men. Even though men are getting millions and women aren't getting millions, they're taking more from the pot in total than men are getting. A higher
in percentage, not total.
Yeah. So like even that goes to show that it's not about equality. It's about who watches and who the viewership. Revenue,
exactly.
It all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and so I feel like, I think the music industry has actually a pretty good balance. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because I think the music industry, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how deep or, happy it gets at times, it's always based on talent. And people are so objectifying towards those artists. Maybe that's a good and a bad thing, but I feel like you never, like when you ask somebody if you like an artist's music, right? Like, do you like Taylor Swift, right? It's usually just a yes or a no. And if I ask, and if you say no, I can get offended all I want. Like, oh, I think Taylor Swift is amazing, But you're held to your own opinion. And that's why there's such a good balance in the music industry, as well as because women get so much recognition, and so do men. And I feel like now there are some male artists that I can think of that are making millions, right? But I think the way that Taylor Swift has advertised her tour and the way she has gotten all this community together, she deserves to make more.
She's making a lot more
than some other artists. And that's not men saying, oh, that's not equal. Because now what? Are men making 70 cents to the dollar? It's stupid. No, because it's based off talent, right? And I think that there shouldn't be, just because of equality, if there's a man who has a master's degree and a woman straight out of high school, I think naturally the man should be making more. Mm-hmm. Not because of gender, but because of their experience and their education, And so I feel like there's a point to where chauvinism, going back to chauvinism, I think there's multiple interviews that I've watched where it's, why do women and their equality and empowerment get classified as feminism? But when men try to stand up for themselves, it's not only chauvinism, it's also misogynistic.
Because they would use, women or anyone supporting the modern feminist movement would use the fact that men have been, and this is the same for white people too. White people, when they try to advocate for their race, they would say, well, you've already had the power. Mm-hmm. You've already done this. You've already oppressed us. So why would you want advocation if you have the power right now and you're keeping us down? Why would you say you're oppressed?
Yeah, that's perfectly.
And that's a very, very, a very misleading and a very stupid and a very blind way of thinking. Because at the end of the day, like if you are advocating for equality and the other side doesn't feel like they're equal in a bad, like if they feel that they're less, even if let's say that they're not, but if they feel like they're less, then I mean like at least say, like at least understand and be open-minded on what's the problem, like what the problem is, you know what I mean?
So I actually want to move on to this topic of how we were saying, let's combine the two now, right? Like we've talked about feminism, we've talked about chauvinism and misogyny. Now, how do they compare to each other? So I want to talk about how we've taken the feminism definition, right, and the chauvinism definition, and I'll put them up on the screen for the viewers. But I think both have the exact same ideology. It's just, the opposite gender.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't think I've heard the word chauvinism used once in any political setting for equality, for any empowerment movements. I think all we hear right now is feminism. And I think it's great. I think women should be advocating for their own rights. But it's gotten to a point where when men try to empower themselves, it's chauvinist. Because, like you said earlier, and you put it perfectly, we already have the power. So why would we want more? Why would we want to keep on oppressing?
Exactly.
And it's turned into misogyny.
Yeah. So I mean, like we talked about before, and I know I'm going back to this, but men and women, they work hand in hand. They're the greatest team in this world, right? Without men and women, me and you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So to break that team, to get in between, for the government to get in between that team, is something of it's waging war on the family.
Yeah.
And I always stress that the family is the most important thing in this country. If you destroy the family, you will destroy this country. So the fact that the family is literally getting destroyed, as we talked about last video, birth rates are low, divorce rates are high. That just goes to show the consequences of the modern feminist movement, and also the fact that males think that they're not better than women today, but they are basically blaming women. They're blaming women for that. And it's not all women's fault. A woman, dude, people don't understand, dude. Girls have such a holding over men.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And dude, you can be a billionaire, dude. You can be a billionaire. You can have all these fancy cars. If you love a woman and she doesn't love you back, or she messes with your heart, dude, that can ruin your day, bro. You can be so happy one day.
Not even your day, your week.
It can ruin your life, dude. You can have all the money in the world, dude. But if you have a woman who you love, but who is not reciprocating that love back to you, and who's cheating on you, dude, you can fall, and that's what happens. People fall in depression, dude. People, and just because of a woman, and vice versa. But it's more men, because women have such a hold on men.
Yeah, and I think, going off of what your example that I just thought of, I think that you're so right. When women have such a big holding and power over men, because men have this natural instinct to, they either fall in love or they care for them.
And they want to protect what's theirs.
Exactly. And so when they're not able to, they fall into a depression and anxiety state. But the other side, when a man cheats on a woman, that woman and her friends are almost not even in sadness. Now, obviously, yes, there's mourning of, there's grief, there's loss of, your partner. But I think that women get over this hump so quickly because their ideology is, oh, he didn't deserve you. He didn't deserve you. He didn't provide enough for you. You didn't do anything wrong. And no, obviously, if somebody cheats on you, I don't think you did anything wrong. But I think there's the way that men and their friends, their guys, get over this hump. It's so different in the process.
Dude, it's like
compared to women.
It's like night and day, dude. Because men, and I would say this because I'm a guy, right? I'm obviously biased. Everyone's biased.
Yeah.
But dude, when in breakups or when you're mad, when you're sad, men say they say, okay, well, now what are you gonna do? You're gonna have to work. You go to the gym, bro. Go to the gym, work out. They do positive stuff. But on the other side, the modern feminist women say, oh, like you said, he didn't deserve you. Go out, find another man. Let's go party. Like that's the problem, and that's the difference.
Okay, I think it's actually women. Let's distract ourselves.
Let's distract ourselves.
Whereas a lot, no, I'm not saying all women or all men.
Yeah. That's why.
But majority of people, especially in the modern age, men are like, let's work on ourselves. Like, let's go to the gym, and women are like, let's go get over this hump. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying either one's better. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, going to the gym is better.
Yes, but no, not like the gym versus partying. I'm saying the ways to get over it.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that people have their own ways of processing, and I don't want to say that every man that gets to that goes through a breakup goes to the gym. Yeah. And I'm not saying that every woman who goes through a breakup goes to party. You know, it's definitely not. And I actually would argue that majority of people don't do that.
A lot of people don't.
But some people do, and those people glorify it on social media to where even, for example, me and you who wouldn't do that, or other women who wouldn't go out to party, get that idea in their head. They look at it and maybe they don't act on it, but they get tempted to. You know,
I would say today for men and women, the self-improvement is flawed because you know how when they talk about self-improvement today, it's going to the gym, it's reading your Bible, which you should all the time, going to the gym, eating healthy after you get a breakup, after you get your heart broken, and that's going back to the incels, like that's what they think, the sigmas, right? I go to the gym after I get my heart broken, after she cheats on me, go to the gym, I work on myself, I find God if I have time for that. But I go to the gym, I do this, I do that, and then maybe I'll get my revenge on her. Well, why don't you, when you're in the relationship, you go to the gym, you work on yourself, you find God. When you're in the relationship and the man does that and the woman does that, dude, you guys are going to grow and skyrocket into something greater because you guys both care enough for each other to better yourselves as men and women, mentally, physically, emotionally, and that will bring you guys together even stronger. But no, you want to get broken up, or you want to break up and then you want to be single, you want to go party and do whatever you want to do, but at the same time work on yourself. That's the problem with self-improvement today. It's flawed. Yeah,
self-improvement is such a big flaw, and I think that self-improvement is such a big factor in that comparison between feminism and chauvinism. And I think that when it comes to the end of the day, feminism has taken an extreme level of we want to be superior. Only in the modern ideology. I still think that the traditional is still definitely has some, validity to it. But I think that this new modern ideology that women should be superior to men has almost taken that comparison and taken chauvinism and been like, if you even dare to think about trying to support men, you're misogynistic.
Yeah, so to conclude, dude, basically out of our message, what we got is, look, we're a team.
Yes.
We are equal. We're both loved under the eyes of God. Mm-hmm. Where no one is better than the other.
Yeah.
Men are called to protect and provide for their women. Women are called to care and nourish for their men and their kids. Dude, that's what it says in the Bible. But it also says for women to submit to their husbands. Also, men submit to your wives.
Yes.
So, and that's what people forget, and that's exactly. And many claim that the Bible is sexist. It's not sexist. The Bible knows what it's doing. The Bible has a answer to every single one of the world's problems. Mm-hmm. Every single one. Do you think of one thing? The Bible there's a verse in there for that problem. So to claim that the Bible is sexist is a fallacy in itself. So that's basically the main thing. That's why we tie this biblically. This is not just what we think. This isn't our opinion, right? Some of it is our opinion, but this is facts. This is what we are taught as a, because we both read the Bible. We're both Bible reading Christians. That's what we're taught.
Yeah.
So to think that this is just an opinion from a man who's biased and he's a man, so he's not gonna understand how women feel. That's not, by no means.
Yeah. And so I think at the end of the day, as we wrap up this episode, I feel like our biggest takeaway is the fact that there are traditional values that we should still be holding true to. Like the Bible, that's a traditional value. And I think there's traditional values of feminism that Nate and I are definitely not at all trying to bash. I feel like we both agree with the fact that women should be equal to men. And that and we know that historically and still now, women continue to struggle and are oppressed because of men's, wrongdoings. But I feel like we're talking about in this modern day and age, there's so many levels to where women have taken over in a not positive way that men need or even feel like they have to stand up for themselves. But when we do stand up for ourselves, we continue to get bashed even more. And so as we dive further into something else after the next episode, I feel like the biggest takeaway from this is just that there needs to be equality in both because we work so well together, right? There's no way in the world, there is no world where if it's all men, we'll thrive, or all women will thrive. It's just not how God created us. And so there needs to be some type of equality struck, Anything else?
So yeah, no, you wrapped it up, dude. I think you did great. This was a great episode, right? It wasn't as sensitive, I would say, as like our last episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it, dude. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify. We have accounts for all 3 of those.
Yeah, everything's in the description.
I want to thank you for episode 3, and then we'll see you guys next week.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.